Thanks for joining us. Today, Zach and I are going to talk a little bit about the basics of looking ahead and planning for retirement. For many people who are going to be watching this video, unfortunately, it's planning for something that is probably at least 30 years ahead for many of you folks that are watching this. And we want to try to demystify the process now when you could make a great difference in your future plans. So thank you for joining us. Zach, why don't we start off with some definitions? Because once we get into the discussion, we're going to be using some terminology and it'd be helpful to get those clarified. So I'll just go through some of the terminology and lob it over to you for some clarifying definitions.
Okay.
I think the first thing to start with would be stocks and bonds.
Simplistic terms, a stock is a company. Think of Apple, Google, Facebook, whatever the company may be, but that's what a stock is. And a stock, you can invest in multiple different ways. You can invest in an individual stock on your own, not through the retirement plan, but sticking with the concept today, through the retirement plan, you will have stock or equity funds, and those will have a basket of companies and or stocks in that particular portfolio. So you're able to invest in an array of different companies, and those are again stocks, to invest for your future. And that's through your retirement. You can also invest in individual stocks on your own, not through your retirement account.
Is it fair to say that a stock is a share of a company? It's a slice of that company's pie.
Exactly right.
And so, am I correct in saying that a stock, equity, or shares are generally used interchangeably?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Maybe if you could expand on this concept of a basket of stocks, a mutual fund or an index fund. Tell me about those.
For those that, again, are just kind of starting out on this podcast or on this event, basically what will happen is you will have funds. That's what they're called, mutual funds, or ETFs, as Dom called it, which are called exchange-traded funds. But basically, those are a basket of stocks that may be similar, if you will, to a certain objective. So let's say if you look at your retirement account, so we're focusing on retirement here. If you look at your retirement account, you'll see maybe a list of 20, 30 different funds. And those are basically a basket of stocks that, based off of the fund you choose, have a similar objective, whether it's growth, whether it is value. They're different in terms of their style, whether they're investing in small companies, mid-sized companies, large companies. That is why funds are so popular and they're available through your retirement plan, is you don't have to be the one to choose this stock or this company. Home Depot versus Walmart, let's say, is going to do better. You're going to have a basket of that same type of style of companies in your fund menu for your retirement plan.
Maybe reading a little bit between the lines, is a fund inherently safer place to put money?
Exactly right. Yes, it is. Because now you're not subject to just one investment doing well or not doing well. And then if we bring it even a little further, it's okay, we look at, the cash flow or the partnerships of that one company. You don't need to worry at all about that, because individual stock selection is way riskier than choosing a basket of funds, which is why, frankly, the 401k and the retirement plans that you have options to invest in are using funds.
Certainly for the audience that we're presenting this for, people are very busy and probably don't have the time to do all the independent, individual company research that it might take to decide if a stock is worth getting or not.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
You mentioned 401k. There's a whole bunch of different versions. 401k, 403b,
Sure.
401a. Can you maybe in broad terms, describe what those are.
401k is the general term for a retirement plan. But technically, a 401k is for a for-profit organization. So if you're a non-for-profit organization, most of the time you have what's called a 403b. But in reality, they're very similar. A 401k, 403b are almost interchangeable in terms of how they function. They are designed to be your retirement plan account where you have these investment options, these funds to choose from and invest for your future. 401a is even a broader term as it relates to a 401k and a 403b. It's literally all of them, say, compassed together. When you hear a 401k, a retirement plan, there are dollar amount limits that you could put into it. So if you are under 50 years old for next year, 2026, if you have a 401k you're eligible for, you can put in $24,500. That's the maximum you could put in if you're under 50. If you're over 50, you can do an extra $8,000. But the point is, those are the dollar amounts. And even if you make $50,000, $100,000, $1 million per year, you could still put in those same dollar amounts and do pre-tax and/or Roth, which we'll get into those later. But I want to bring that up now because an IRA and/or a Roth IRA, they have different income limits and they also have different contribution limits. So what that means is a contribution limit compared to the 401k, if you're under 50, it was $24,500 for a 401k. But for an IRA, it's only $7,000. That's the amount you can put in. That's what we call the contribution limit. An income limit, though, if you make over $165,000 a year for the Roth IRA, then you're actually not able to put money directly into that Roth IRA. 401ks and IRAs are very different because they have different income limits and they have different contribution limits.
They're both means of saving for retirement in the future. If my employer doesn't offer a retirement plan, can I open a 401k or an IRA on my own?
Great question. You cannot open a 401k, which is a 401a, a 403b. You can't open any of those unless you're employed by an employer. But you can open up a traditional IRA or a Roth IRA, or both, if you don't have an employer offering a plan.
So we've used the term Roth a couple of times. We should probably now go into a little more detail as to what that distinction means, because I will tell you that many employers will offer a choice between the two flavors, and I think especially for the demographic that we're targeting here, our audience, this will be an important item to define.
So Roth, think of that term as just a feature. So Roth is the after-tax feature, whether it's in a 401k or a retirement plan or an IRA. You're now choosing, okay, let's say you're going to choose in your 401k, I'm going to contribute to the Roth inside of my 401k. Remember, those contribution limits are $24,500 if you're under 50. So you could say, I'm going to contribute to my Roth in my 401k. You don't have to worry about how much you make because there's no income limits there. So you can contribute up to that $24,500 into the Roth inside your 401k. Again, think of it as a feature. That's the after-tax feature. So what that just means is, if I put in that $24,500, I've paid taxes on it today. So it's as if I just took my money as my salary, but it grows tax-free for the rest of your life.
And so the Roth grows tax-free because you've already paid taxes on the money.
Exactly.
And so when let's say it sits there, it grows, and now you're 65, you retire, and you take money out of that Roth, the Roth account. Is it taxed then?
Nope.
Because you've already paid taxes.
Correct.
So the difference sounds like it's not if you pay taxes, but when you pay taxes.
Exactly right. I say
the Roth, you pay taxes now. The the non-Roth or the traditional, you pay taxes when you take it out.
When you take it out. The Roth in the 401k, again, was that $24,500 is the dollar amount you could put in, but the same concept applies, whatever that grows to when you take it out as tax-free. The Roth IRA, if you are able to do that, meaning, again, you can't make more than $165,000 a year to put money into a Roth IRA. So those are very different things between a Roth in the 401k and the Roth IRA. And then the other very big difference is you can only put in that $7,500 actually to the Roth IRA versus the $24,500 you could put into the Roth in the 401k. And you can do both if you are eligible to do both. But those are the big differences, those contribution limits, how much you can put in, and then income limits, how much you make in order to be able to put money in.
What's a fiduciary?
Good question. So a fiduciary, that definition means you have to do what's in the best interest of the client. I'm a fiduciary. We're independent advisors. That's why we get hired to be the fiduciary to the retirement plan, but also to the employees that I speak to. So anyone I speak to, if they actually decided, hey, we want to sue someone or some advisor or anyone for, misrepresentation, whatever it may be, because I'm a fiduciary, I'm legally bound by law. I have to do what's in the best interest of the client. Other advisors may not be fiduciaries. So if they get sued, frankly, and they say, the client says they didn't do the best interest of me, they did what was in the best interest of them, then they actually, the advisor can actually win that case. But I could never win that case in a sense because I'm a fiduciary. I have to do what's in the best interest of the client. So if a client does ever get into that scenario, if they can prove I or any other fiduciaries did what was not in the best interest of the client, then they will win.
So it sounds like if I'm going to look to hire an advisor, a financial advisor, I'm better off looking for someone that is a fiduciary.
Period. Yeah.
Okay. And I'll also add in that there are financial advisors who are also selling financial products.
Sure.
And might steer you to something that may be more expensive because they'll make more money from that sale as opposed to what might be a more economical approach for someone that is not making a lot just starting out.
Exactly right. Exactly right. There are a lot of annuity salespeople out there and life insurance people that work for an insurance company, if you will, that they are not financial planners. So I'm a certified financial planner with CFP designation, which is something you have to work pretty hard to get. And you also, once you get that, you have to be a fiduciary. If there's a ton of advisors out there in the industry that are not certified financial planners, that a lot of them just say, hey, I'm a financial advisor. So very different, certified financial planner, financial advisor. Financial advisor, they may be licensed, but they're not a fiduciary and they're not a financial planner. So those are typically the people you want to keep a little caution on when they contact you, because they're likely going to try to sell you an annuity. Annuities, to be totally frank, we get the most commission on, period, from any product. So it's about 20 or 25% in terms of a commission that we'll get if we sell someone an annuity. So some people that only sell annuities, and that's their answer to every financial question out there in the industry, just have some caution, because one, they may not be a fiduciary, and two, they, just so you know, they're getting a huge commission on anything they sell to you. There are different options, I'd say, that could be similar to an annuity that you don't have to pay or invest that. But the big thing is, if you make that decision and you buy an annuity, it's locked in for normally 10 to 15 years. And if you need to take the money out, or you say, hey, I made this bad decision, I want to move my money somewhere else, you have to pay a pretty hefty fee. It's called the surrender charge. But that's why When anytime anyone that I talk to gets approached by an advisor that says, oh, this is annuity, it's the best thing since cotton candy, or whatever the case may be, and you should invest in it, let's review it and let's talk about it, because once you make the decision, you're locked in for at least 10 years.
And then the last two terms I have here, because they're 3-letter abbreviations and 2 of the letters are shared in common, so a lot of people get them mixed up even though they're very different. An FSA and an HSA, flexible spending account, healthcare savings account.
So an HSA is called a health savings account, and the only way that you can contribute, you have to be enrolled in a high deductible healthcare plan, whether you're an individual or family or whatever it may be. But that gives you the option to contribute, put money into the HSA, the health savings account. The reason why people do that, the health savings account, is because you could put in about, if you're a family plan, I want to say it's $8,500 into the HSA and get a tax deduction. So you could reduce your taxes. It's basically saying, hey, I want to take some of my money from my paycheck, contribute to my HSA, my health savings account, and then that money that goes in that account will be used for medical expenses when I choose. So that's going to be the biggest difference between an HSA and an FSA, because an FSA you have to use each year or the money's gone.
So use it or lose it.
Use it or lose it.
In the year that you contribute.
Yes. But the HSA, the health savings account that we were talking about just now, that's portable. So what that means is if you leave whatever employer you have and you didn't use the money, you can roll that into another HSA account at your new employer that you're choosing. And if you don't use that money each year, it's not like you lose it. It stays in that HSA account, and you can actually even invest the money.
You can put that money into some of the same mutual funds like we talked about and have that grow over time.
When you take it out and use it for a medical expense, the added benefit is it's tax-free. So whatever that money grew to, if you put in $10,000 over the last few years and it grows to $50,000 by the time you start to take money out, if you use it for medical expenses, it's all tax-free.
So I want to get to the idea of planning for retirement, and maybe we can start by just, for many of the people who are watching this, they're in the very early stages of their career, and I'd like you to maybe discuss and touch on why early is better with retirement planning.
If you started at 25 years old saving $250 a month, if you decided you can do that for 10 years until 35 years old, and then you stopped contributing for the rest of your life, you would have had more money in your retirement account than someone that starts at 35 doing that $250 a month and then ends at 65. So they're saving for 30 years, but you have only saved for 10 years because you started at 25 and ended at 35. You would have had more money than the person that saved at 35 until 65.
And is that simply because the money has a longer time to grow?
That's exactly right. Compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world that Einstein said, right? That's exactly why.
I've got the rest of my finances in order. I've established an emergency fund. I've got all the right insurance protections, homeowners or renters insurance, things like that. I have a payment plan for my student loans, or maybe I've changed my student loan repayment while I'm a resident into something that's more income linked.
Excellent.
So
Perfect.
got all that other stuff done. Tell me about where I start with getting involved with saving for retirement.
Two things. When you progress in your career, the thought is that you'll get a higher salary. You're going to eventually be paying a higher tax because of your income. So why not do it now? Pay the taxes, do Roth now. Again, that's the after tax. feature in the retirement plan or an IRA or both, but do that today.
When you're in a lower tax bracket.
When you're making, a lower salary, you're in a lower tax bracket. And the second part of this is now you're having longer time because you're doing it today versus 5 years from now to have the money grow tax-free. So it's a double-edged sword, which is why I harp on this immensely with people, is contribute when you're starting out to Roth, especially again in your industry, and then maybe once you move on to your role where you have a higher salary, then we consider doing pre-tax and reducing your income today, and then having, at least now you have a combination of tax-free money when you retire and taxable money when you retire. If you don't do any Roth ever, then you're subject to pay taxes at the time that you take the money out, whatever it may be.
You mentioned an employer match for your retirement savings, and there's certain flavors that might exist of that type of match. Can you describe what's out there? What should our viewers be looking for when they read those materials, or listening for when they hear an HR person talk about the retirement benefits?
If you contribute as an employer 3% to your employee's retirement plan, that's pretty standard when it comes to a match in all industries, in a sense. If you work for a company, let's say that wants to give you more in terms of a benefit, then 6% becomes more of like, this company is a pretty good company and they want to help me. Some companies, very rare, can do as much as 10 or 12% even, but that's, again, very rare. So I would say when talking about this match, what it really means is you have to put in 6%, let's say, of your pay, if we're sticking with the match being 6%, so that the employer can give you 6% of your pay. And that's an annual percentage of your pay.
And that 6% is a maximum, so if I only put in 4%, the match will be 4%.
Correct.
Okay. And are there situations where the company will put in a certain percentage even if I don't put anything in?
There are. Again, that's few and
that's less common.
Yeah, it's not as common, yeah.
So people should be aware that most of the time they're going to be looking at getting a match from their employer, and the amount that they get will be capped at a certain percentage and will be dependent on whether or not the employed doc, in this case, is putting in a percent of their salary that the employer will match. It sounds like unless you're really willing to devote a fair amount of time in study and monitoring of individual companies, that funds are the way to go.
Even ETFs too. So ETFs they're called exchange traded funds, like we talked about. They're very similar to stocks where they look like they're trading all the time, like throughout the day, but they're basically just mutual funds that trade throughout the day.
Okay.
But yes, those are way more beneficial, I'd say, than looking at trying to monitor and invest in individual stocks.
I've heard a lot about index funds.
Yes.
What are those?
The classic companies out there like Vanguard and Fidelity that basically the index, think of the S&P 500, which is the stock market, if you will, which is the largest 500 companies in the US. So what happens is a fund company like Fidelity, Vanguard, T. Rowe Price, whatever they may be, American funds, if their objective is, hey, I'm going to be an index fund, if that's the name, because you look at the name of all the funds, they'll say, oh, it's a growth company, whatever it may be, or a value company, but at the end it'll say index. And if it says index, then what they're doing is they're just trying to track the S&P 500, or the market, if you will. So when you look at the price of that fund, you'd assume it would be cheaper because all it's trying to do, which it is track the market or track a certain index.
So, for example, if the S&P 500, Standard & Poor's 500, there are 500 companies. If I have a S&P 500 index fund, then there's 500 company stocks that are contained in that index fund, right? And then there's no one that has to think, should I buy this or sell this, because I'm just going to get those 500 stocks and my growth should parallel that of the S&P 500. But there's not a lot of decision making about which stocks to own. The index defines that.
Perfectly said, exactly. Yeah, so if you use Fidelity, Vanguard, whatever company, but they say, oh, it's the Fidelity 500 index fund or the Vanguard 500, that's exactly how they're managing it. I like to say they don't look at the good, the bad, and the ugly of the 500 in the index. They just track it.
And with 500 types of stocks, you're probably going to get some of all three of those flavors.
That's exactly right.
Okay. And what about mutual, like let's say I plan to retire in 2040. There are some funds that are offered by employers that say you have the option of the Vanguard Target Retirement Date 2040 fund. What are those?
Those funds, in that example, if you're going to retire 2040, they reduce your risk as you get older. It starts high in terms of the equity, the stocks exposure. So it'll say, oh, maybe when you're younger or further away from this 2040 date, we're going to have you in a higher mix of stocks, because stocks are going to give you a potentially higher return. But we call it a glide path, meaning you reduce your risk as you get older, so you reduce the amount of equities in that portfolio, and you'll have a higher percentage of bonds and cash, and that's how they reduce the risk.
And the bonds and cash are less likely to go up and down.
Correct, they're less volatile. Exactly
Okay.
right. So that's the whole reason why more than 2/3 of 401ks or retirement plans in nowadays of the actual clients that use and put their money into these use those target funds.
Those target funds.
Yeah, because it's a set it and forget it option, is like I like to say. Because it, again, that Vanguard or Fidelity, whoever is the manager of those funds, reduces your risk as you get older. Meaning, like you just said, sells out of the stocks that are highly volatile and goes into the bonds and cash that are less volatile.
Is there any downside to that?
Only if you want to be more strategic on your retirement planning. With a 2040 fund like that, it's assuming you're going to retire in 2040 and start to use the money. If you are going to retire in 2040, but you're not going to start to use the money, then maybe you want to be more aggressive, let's say, than someone that's your age that will be using the money in 2040.
So it sounds like if it comes to 2040, but boy, I just got this inheritance that I'm going to use, and the funds that I put in targeting 2040, I'm not going to touch those for another 10 years. What's contained in that fund is not really meant to take advantage of that extra time to provide extra growth.
Exactly right, which is why it's so important to have these individual conversations. If your time frame is 20 years out from that, you don't need to be as, let's say, in bonds or cash, or be as conservative as someone that is going to use the money starting in 2040.
Something that you said earlier, as we talk about different fund options, you mentioned something about a fund being expensive. Now, I'm assuming that if I put $1 in the fund, then there's my $1, it's in the fund. How does a fund be expensive or inexpensive?
In that example, if you put $1 into the fund, it's not a whole dollar that goes into the fund in the sense. There's something called an expense ratio. with all mutual funds, whether they're indexed or they're actively managed. But the point is, when we just talked about index, those tend to be less expensive. So the expense ratio of those funds are lower because, if you remember what we talked about there, they only try to track a certain index or market example. So when they're only tracking it, that's pretty low of a management, let's say, threshold. Like, they don't have to spend a lot of time managing that fund or energy, so that's why it's less expensive. But then there are funds called actively managed that don't have index at the end of their name, that do try to sell out of the bad funds and buy more into the good funds and deal with the ugly. And because they're spending more of their time managing the fund, yes, they will be more expensive. So the range could be as low as, for an index fund, you could pay as low as 0.02%, let's say, of a cost for the expense ratio. But for an active fund, you can go over 1%. Depends on the different funds, and it depends on their style.
There are many people watching now that are going to be thinking, okay, I know I need to save for retirement early because I'm going to get the most out of my dollars, but I also need to pay off my debt. Besides talking about trying to develop or enroll in a program where your debt payment, your loan payment is tied to your income, can people do both? It's realistic that people can save for retirement?
It is realistic. So, and it's a great question because I deal with this a lot. Competing goals, you call it. Sticking with the match example, if you have to put in 6% of your pay to your retirement plan in order to get the full company contribution, then I tell people, try to do that. So you never get free money, right? But this is technically free money if you're able to put that amount in. If you can't, fine, we'll talk about a budget, whatever it may be. But paying off the student debt is super important too, and having a plan around that. And if you have to refinance or you can't qualify for those income-driven repayment programs, then we'll have to talk about, well, what's the best way to deal with your budget? And you can do it. I see people do it all the time, but you can't. I also say ignorance isn't bliss here. You can't just say, oh, I'm going to go through my normal life and see where the chips may lie at the end of the month. You want to make sure, okay, I know I'm paying this much. I've already refinanced to the lowest, let's say, a loan that I can for my student loans. So taking the right action to get to where you need to be, and then creating a budget around, well, what are my other expenses and what does my lifestyle look like? And frankly, I use this example all the time, and I think I did last time with you, is when I looked at myself, I said, oh, I spend way too much on Grubhub and Uber Eats and all that type of stuff. So when you do that and you actually take a good hard look at it, you'll find more money in your budget than you probably realize. But you have to do that, and you have to cut down on, for me, it was Grubhub. I have HelloFresh, and I cook more, so that saves now on my expenses.
This would be a good time to talk a little bit about the lifestyle issues that come into play as people determine their budget. For many folks, this is their first major steady paycheck. It's also a stage in people's life trajectory where there's a lot of weddings, there's new kids, there's maybe a house. Some of the training programs are in expensive cities. So there's some competing issues there, some of which are essential, but not all of which are. So how does lifestyle fit into the decision making here?
Understanding kind of what your life is going to look like. I think, like, if you say, oh, I've been dating this person for a while, we're going to eventually get married. Okay, well, be specific. So don't say we're eventually going to get married. Say, we're going to get married here. This is how much it's going to cost us, and this is how long it's going to take, etc. Like, don't be vague, because if you're vague about it, then that's when you get caught up, in an issue with lifestyle creep, we call it. So yeah, you may get married, you may have kids, right? How much do kids cost? Honestly, a Fidelity study last time I checked, without college, over $350,000. Or if you say, oh, I'm going to join a country club, I just finished my training, I just got my good job. Well, what does a country club really charge? Or are you going to buy another car or a rental property or whatever it may be? Like, that's what it comes to lifestyle creep.
Budgeting and really sitting down to settle on what your goals are and what your priorities are sounds like an important underlying theme here.
Bringing it back to what we were talking about, in our last session, it's all about, though, knowing where your money goes. And like I said, ignorance is not bliss. Prioritize where your money goes and when.
And we talked in our previous recording about some different budgeting apps that are out there. And I started using one after that discussion, and it is a game changer in terms of helping me understand what I spend on, and then I look at that list and I say, well, I understand now where my money's going. These are not big priorities for me.
Exactly.
And so maybe I can do things to save some of that money and not spend it on things that are not priorities. But knowing what your priorities are is an important first step. So we've covered a lot of ground. Is there anything else that is relevant to the discussion of helping people understand where to start with retirement savings that we haven't covered that we should?
The only thing I'd say is if you've exhausted all of these accounts already, your retirement account, whether it's Roth or pre-tax, an IRA, whether it's Roth or pre-tax, consider a brokerage account, which is an individual or it could be a joint account. But basically, it's an account where you invest in. There's no income limits. There's no tax benefits. But it's a savings account, if you will, that you can invest in. And I always tell people that's probably a better option than keeping more money in a savings account than you would for an emergency, because you will be able to generate a higher potential return by investing that money versus saving it more in the savings account. But that's it. Other than that, we went through a good amount, like you said.
We did.
Yeah.
And I think we covered a lot of really important topics. So thanks very much.
My pleasure.